You can't make good decisions if you don't have the clarity about where we're going, especially, or the competency to make the decision, right?
ProCognita, Get Agile podcast.
Intent-based leadership. Interview with Jenni Jepsen.
Hi and welcome to Get Agile podcast. We are in ACE conference venue today, and my special guest today is Jenni Jepsen. I did it well. Okay. So first of all, you're the person who brought the idea from turn the ship around from the intent-based leadership. I'm gonna show the book, but you're gonna. I hope you're gonna introduce the book in a few seconds. You're the person who bring this one into Agile world. So most likely we're gonna focus on this one. Did I miss anything on the intro?
A little on the neuroscience. So why does this way of leading actually work and tie into how we are wired?
So it's not just working because we said it's working.
No.
There's some science behind it. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
So anyway, intent-based leadership. What is that for people?
Yeah. So intent-based leadership is a way of leading where we give control based on technical competence and organizational clarity. So, and the whole idea of giving intent makes it possible for people to be more autonomous, to take responsibility. Rather than asking for permission and waiting, we're sharing our intent and taking action. And that two-way communication is safe for both the manager or the boss and also for the employee or the team member. And it spreads in an organization. So intent-based leadership, we have everybody running around sharing intent and taking action rather than waiting for permission.
Which is pretty cool because, you know, from one hand side, we get this kind of, let's call it like a command and control. So you basically are getting orders as an employee getting orders. From other side, there's some idea we need to be self-organizing. So you guys go and figure out the self. But the thing is that often in self-organizing, we don't have the knowledge. So the clarity, and we don't have the skills because, you know, for the last 10 years, we've been in this command and control world, and we never had a chance to get those. And now we are being told, you self-organize, you figure out themselves where we are, right?
Yes, and that takes time. And so one of the stories in David's book, Turn the Ship Around. So in 2012, I read the book. It had just been published. And I got, 75 pages in. I said, this is the book we're going to give to every single one of our clients this year for a holiday gift.
So just a comment to David, if you get a lot of sales after today, that's, you know who to call.
And it was the story of David. So Turn the Ship Around, if you don't know the story to Turn the Ship Around. David was a submarine captain, and he had wanted to be a submarine captain his entire life, and he studied and studied, and finally he got the assignment to take over as submarine captain for the USS Olympia. And so he studied for a whole year in the US Navy. You have to know everything, so have all the answers, know everything about the crew, everything about the ship, everything. And a few weeks before he was supposed to take command of the Olympia, the captain of the USS Santa Fe resigned. And the Santa Fe was the worst performing ship in the US Navy at that time. And David tells a story that all the captains were joking, like, who's the poor bastard that's going to get that assignment? David was that poor bastard. So he had 3 weeks to learn everything that he could about the USS Santa Fe, totally different kind of submarine. And he's a really intelligent guy, so I'm sure he knew a lot, but not everything. So the story that sort of really grabbed me is that he was helping the crew get ready for an inspection. And so what they wanted to do is the nuclear reactors have the power go out of it as quickly as possible. And so he had the first officer in front of him, and then the navigator who was doing what he needed to do. And in a in a submarine. So still having that chain of command in the submarine. And David said, okay, 1/3 ahead. So the nuclear reactor, the power going out at 1/3 ahead. And David thought, okay, well, let's stress them a little bit more. Let's do 2/3 ahead. So he gave the order to the first officer, 2/3 ahead. The first officer gave the order further, 2/3 ahead. And nothing was happening. And the navigator's, his shoulders were going up. David's like, what's going on? And so David walked around. He asked, hey, Nav, what's happening? And the navigator said, there is no 2/3 ahead on the Santa Fe, sir. And in that moment, David was like, oh, okay. And so he asked the first officer, did you know about this 2/3 thing? And the first officer, yes, sir, I did. And at that point,
I wasn't asked if there is something like that.
Yeah,
right?
David just thought, okay, if I'm giving orders, the command and control, we're going to be killed because I don't know enough. So the whole book is not only the story about turning that ship around, so becoming the best from the worst, moving to the best, but actually how David created that environment where the crew could jump in and become even more competent than they were. They already knew a lot. There were mechanisms that enabled them to become even better and have that motivation that they wanted to become even better.
Which is basically something that the pain managers feel because, you can spend, as a manager, spend hours talking about the transparency, how it is important in this company, and then, no one is going to tell you that there is no 2/3 or in this company because you were not asked and no one thought it's a good idea to tell you that, we don't have this one, right?
Yeah, it takes courage from the team member to speak up. It takes creating that space to let people jump in and tell you things, and really changing our own mindsets as leaders or managers, or the ideas that we had, at least I had growing up, about what leadership is, that you needed to be the one that told everybody what to do. That was part of the job, and that is so not. And having self-organizing teams who are maybe not comfortable quite yet, it could be they don't have the competency quite, or maybe more likely, they don't feel safe enough, because what if they make a mistake? Who are they going to blame, right? It's their own fault.
So you were just showing this on your keynote. So for those who haven't seen the keynote, because you are not here, you can see the keynote. It should be released pretty soon as well, hopefully. So you were showing how to move that direction. So can we stop a little bit on that? Like, how do you create those competencies? How do you create the clarity, but also how do you make a safe space for those people?
Yeah. It takes time, really, and patience, and a willingness and openness to do that. So if you're in an organization where there's a lot of pressure all the time to deliver. We're looking at outputs
never
and
heard
not
about
outcomes.
those.
Right. I mean, it's really hard to find the space to stop and okay, could we do this in a different kind of way? Can I, as a leader, create the space? Do I have to give the answers? So there are tools that we use that are based on language. So if someone comes to me and says, hey, tell me what to do, Jenni, I say, well, what do you think we should do? And if they're like, oh, you don't pay me to think, okay, what do you see happening? What do you hear? Share with me the observations. Based on that, what do you think? And if they're still like, no, I'm not even going to tell you what I think. Okay, based on what you shared with me, this is the decision, right? So we start with a base of psychological safety. And then what we want to do is sort of move up. It's called the ladder of leadership. It's a series of questions that go from tell me what to do, this is what I see, this is what I think, this is what I'd like to do, this is what I intend to do, yay! That's where we want to go. But we can't go too quickly for most people. And on the opposite side, if we're trying to sort of lead up with our managers, help our managers give us more control, we need to go all the way to their level and say, if they're the command and control type, to say, okay, I'll do what you say. Would you like to know what I see? So I did this with director in a bank, and he was really frustrated. He was reporting directly to the CIO, and he himself had a bunch of direct reports. And every month he had to go to the CIO with his peers, and they presented their reports to the CIO. And then the CIO would tell them exactly what to do. And he was super frustrated. And I said, okay, next month you go and you say, okay, I'll do what you say. Would you like to know what I see? And let's see, maybe he'll actually be interested in your observations. So he did that the next month, and the CIO was like, no, I don't want to know what you see, just do it. He did this every month for 9 months. And at the ninth month, the CIO said, all right, fine, tell me what you see. And he did. And then the next thing out of his mouth was, would you like to know what I think? And I mean, okay, the CIO got fired after that, but still 9 months of investment in your manager, if you will, to try to help. So this is not a quick fix. The more we have people who are running around sharing intent and using questions, curious questions, pausing, creating spaces, the quicker it spreads. But if it's one person, oh yeah, it takes a long time.
Just to make it clear, it's not about CEO. When CEO start asking questions, they get fired. Just to make it clear for you guys. Anyway, so the important thing here, because Dave wrote this book from the, let's call it CEO of the submarine perspective. But what you're saying, you can use the same concept from anyone in the organization to ask the question up, right? So like, okay, I go to my manager and, I want to talk with CEO. My manager is telling me, you can't talk to CEO because of the different reason, and there are good reasons. Yeah. And most of the reasons, I don't want CEO to know what he shouldn't know. That can be a good reason in the organization. And this is what you're saying, okay, I can ask the questions to build a safe space for my manager to move into that direction.
Yeah, and the neuroscience backs this up, because if we sort of go into a situation, try to convince our manager, they're just going to defend it more because it feels like a threat to their authority. And instead, if we acknowledge the value that they bring as managers in the organization, it makes them more open to listening to what it is that we're asking about or what it is we would like to share. So we have to do that in a safe way. And I mean, that's only in an organization where there's still that more traditional type of management happening.
We still have some of them, I would say.
Maybe a couple.
Maybe a couple. Recently I was doing a talk like how to speak with managers, basically. I call it speaking managerish.
Yeah.
So how you convince managers. And one of the things you mentioned is like, okay, we need to make them safe for them because what many times we think is like people at the top of organization, they can make any decision and change the organization easily. The truth is that most cases they cannot, because there is still someone over CEO, like you say, okay, the CEO was gone, not because he went fishing, but because someone else make a decision that he is gonna be gone.
Yeah.
So there is always someone over you, and even if your CEO will say, okay, we're gonna change the way we run the ship, it's not going to happen overnight, despite CEO won't, unless there's a one-person company. But in other cases, other people need to change.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said there is a model for this one. It's not in the book as far as I remember.
No.
So where it is?
Yeah. So what happened then with the book? After it was actually my husband and partner who finished reading the book after I did. He said, "I'm going to get in touch with that guy," and I'm like, "Yeah, of course. No, I am." And so he wrote to him, and basically the post was on David's Facebook site, and the post basically said, "Do you know about Agile? Because everything in your book fits in making Agile work in an organization." And David wrote back, "Never heard of it." Okay, maybe not exactly that, but he hadn't heard about Agile. And so that started the relationship.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, long time ago. And of course, the book has spread like wildfire in the Agile community because it fits so brilliantly with this way of working. And understanding the neuroscience behind it is really helpful, because it's not like, as you said, somebody's great idea or whatever, and now, oh, we should go do this. It's actually backed by science. So, and David didn't know that, of course, why it was all working. It was just stuff that he thought made sense to do. He didn't have the answer, so they still needed to perform. So how do we do that? And the only way to do it is to do it together. So it started our long working relationship and creating more of the training materials, if you will, information about intent-based leadership. So taking that and putting a more structure around it, which became intent-based leadership.
And by the way, for people who are watching us, we will put every links to any books and stuff mentioned here under the recording, so you can find it there. And so there is also a book which we don't have with us, but it's worth mentioning.
Thank you.
With two authors.
Yeah. So it's the book that I wrote together with my partner, called Together: How Leaders Involve and Engage People to Get Great Things Done. And it's a very pragmatic way of looking at how we work together. And of course, it brings in intent-based leadership into that. It brings in psychological safety. It brings in a lot of the science behind it, feedback, all kinds of things. So it's divided into sections around understanding together and planning together and validating together and reflecting together. And when you do those 4 things, you get to great results. It doesn't sort of dictate how to do that, although we have lots of ideas in the book on how. It opens up, just like this conference, about going beyond the frameworks so that people feel more empowered to try things, self-organizing teams to learn things and be able to test them out.
And I need to ask this question: do we have this framework about beyond? I know this beyond framework, but still, we have this framework about moving to the next level with the conversation between leader and let's say other people in the book as well? Yeah,
it's no, but it's one of the mechanisms. And so we'll have a link to David's website on there, because you can get the Ladder of Leadership cards. And I'm happy to share more information about that.
We're gonna do that.
Yeah. So it's a whole, intent-based leadership is really about the behaviors. So it's not about preaching, oh, we should do this, oh, psychological safety. It's actually practical. So things that we can put into action so that we can feel the benefits and see the benefits, very much physical evidence of it working, and not just, here's one more leadership model where we should delegate. No, that's not how this works.
Awesome. Yeah. So one thing you mentioned, I hope we'll find this one. I love the words you use, like I'm recovering control freak. I love that one. And most cases, we are used to being told that the manager need to have the answer, you need to make a quick decision, you need to know what is happening, and it's easier for us to control. And now we go to this kind of agile training, what everybody is saying, we need to be agile, so we learn that there is a self-organizing team and everything that's fine. Except the moment when the problems comes into the organization and the old behaviors kicks in again. So this is what I noticed, like everything is fine, everything is safe, we talk about the self-organization, doing this retrospective, everything that is fine, and then there is a deadline coming in, we gave up everything, we just go to the manual control. If I'm this kind of manager, what would suggest me?
To understand those triggers. So that is so common, and it is so true for me as well. So we are raised to be in control. And at least for me, growing up, in the era that I grew up, rewarded for being smart, for having all the answers. There's like, oh, Jenni, look at her, she's a role model, she's like got it all together. And I, saying I don't know, ooh, that was scary. I hardly ever said I don't know, because I didn't get rewarded for saying I don't know.
One other thing I'm always saying is like we are taught how to give answer, but never how to ask questions, right?
Exactly. So we have to retrain our brains. And I can tell you, I am a recovering control freak. When we are under stress, so have pressure, deadlines, whatever, something's not working in the organization, and now we need to deliver, we always go back to the old ways. And even though, for instance, I've been planning in a more agile way for forever, it feels like now, for at least 15 years, 16 years, maybe longer than that. Under pressure, my first instinct isn't, let's involve and engage everyone. My first instinct is, give it to me, I'll get it done. And that's my trigger. So when I talk about triggers, when you have that trigger that, give it to me, I'll get it done, that's when you need to stop yourself and say, whoa, this is exactly when I need to involve and engage my team. So, and that takes practice. So just like any new habit, that takes practice.
Awareness is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Then acting as quickly as you can before the triggers will, move you to the situation when you cannot control this anymore, probably.
Yeah.
And then what?
Yeah, and then you need to do it over and over and over again. And some things are easier to give control, and some things are not. So things that you care about or things that irritate you are much harder to sort of give control to someone else. So I joked about the parking thing in my talk this morning, and I am pretty good at giving control at work. When I'm sitting in the passenger seat with my husband, we're going somewhere, trying to find a parking spot, I'm like, oh my God, can't we just, he's like waiting for the parking gods to find a spot like right close to the door. And I'm thinking, we have two legs, can't we just park over there and just walk? And so what I know from the neuroscience is that in those situations, I'm really training my brain. So the trigger is that whole parking thing, and my nudge to myself is, don't say anything. Don't speak, because I don't trust myself to be like, oh, it's fine, it's no problem. So if I just like, and then we park, and then it's like, okay, we're here, let's go. And I've been working on this nudge for a couple years, maybe longer than that, but I'm training my brain. And at the point where it's like, no problem, wherever, then I know I'm good. So it takes a really long time.
So maybe your husband is just helping you practicing that.
Don't tell him.
You haven't looked at this one from that perspective. He's just your coach for that.
Yeah.
All right. I want to move back once again to those clarity and skill set.
Competency.
You name it. So the thing I like in the talk is like you first build the trust, then you make sure that no clarity or competencies we're not missing any of those two. Yeah. Now. Can we get into like a practical, specific examples, like how we do it, how we make sure that we're going right direction? Because what I mentioned at the beginning, sometimes Agile means, okay, you guys self-organize yourself, and they don't know what to achieve, how to achieve, they don't have the skills, and they lead to this huge frustration on the team, right?
Yeah, and that doesn't work, right? You can't make good decisions if you don't have the clarity about where we're going, especially, or the competency to make the decision, right? So if somebody would ask me, oh, what do you think we should do with this code? I don't know. I know nothing about that. Don't ask me that question. I have no expertise, and that's not useful. So we need to help our teams, and hopefully we're hiring people who have technical competency. And hopefully we have teams that are cross-functional. I don't know, not always, I know. So that we have the competencies we need, and we talk to each other about, okay, based on that, based on the purpose, the vision, the strategy, then how do we get there? So, and practically the only way, at least that we have found, is to involve and engage your people in the planning. So rather than cascading plans down the organization where we start with strategic whatever ambitions, they're usually super fluffy, go out 10 years, and then we have roadmaps all over the place, or big bets and then roadmaps, and then 90-day plans maybe, and then team plans. We need to involve different people who are at different levels. Not everybody in every single planning session, but if we're looking at creating a roadmap, it shouldn't just be the managers in those areas. We need to involve some product people, subject matter experts who can say, is this even feasible? Right? So we're looking at all of those things and do the overlapping planning. And then people need to talk to each other. So you can't just like share the PowerPoint or the Miro board or the Jira board or whatever ADO, whatever tool you're using after you've created it. Nobody gets any meaning from just reading. You need to involve and engage in that. And that's how we get real clarity. And it feels like it takes more time. And maybe it does in the beginning, but over the sort of the long haul, you have fewer questions. You build the clarity.
Talking about the time, I think it takes more time, but you spend less time than fixing because people didn't understand you. But the other thing that comes to me right now is like you mentioned during your talk that move the decision making to where information is, but it seems that you also need to move. The clarity is basically the information as well, right? So you need to not move down the decision making, but you also need to provide the information that is necessary for making the decision. So as a leader in the organization, I mean, especially when I'm changing the organization, my assumption is that people may not know everything I know.
No.
And basically, not just about telling you guys figure out it yourself, but it's okay, this is the information I have.
Yep.
And figure out using this information. So,
Yeah.
so as a leader, I mean, my goal changed not just, by asking the question, but also what kind of information I provide.
Yes, and then also how we sort of certify the understanding. So one of the mechanisms in intent-based leadership is don't brief, certify. So, and what we mean by briefing is, I come with the strategy and say, here it is, and this is what we're going to do next month, and there, all of that.
50 pages of the PowerPoint,
yeah, exactly.
And people are just falling
exactly.
asleep.
Yeah, and instead, certify is, okay, here we have this. We involve and engage people. What does this mean for us? What does this mean for you in your role or in your team or however? And then the team members are coming to you with, this is what it means. And then if there are any misconceptions or something about the strategy, then and you can say, oh, okay, I can see I wasn't clear enough. Here is what we actually mean. And yes, as you said, it takes more time up front. It does. Saves time in the end because you have that clarity.
And with someone else clarified all the requirements for you, or you do the research yourself. In first case, it's going to be shortened, except that all the fixes will take more time usually.
Yes, and you know what? People don't know what they want, so those requirements are meaningless.
I know. One more thing I had in mind previously. I was just looking for this one. You say, okay, people know how to create product. Let's say, so we expect them to know how the craftsmanship. However, again, the thing is when we move to a more traditional approach of let's 2 years planning and then 2 years of execution to more iterative approach, which is basically the concept of Agile. I believe that there are different skill sets necessary from the engineering perspective as well. So we need to learn how we design, how we develop, how we engineer in short iteration. And I believe that those skill sets, despite Agile being around for 30 years by now, or at least XP practice being around for 30 years by now, they're still missing. And we can say, okay, you guys need to deliver iteratively. The only thing we said, okay, we need to meet up every day for 15 minutes to talk to each other, and go ahead, guys. And there are, and the strong assumption with all this Agile approach is that the team will figure out it themselves. And at the same time, they're missing these competencies. This is okay, they can figure out if they know where to search for, but if you don't know what are the questions, it's hard to ask the question,
and
right?
I also think, what a waste of time, right? So if we look at the Kahneman framework, for example, understanding how to bring people together to, talk to customers or how to develop iteratively. This is not a complex problem. This is there are experts who have done it over and over and over and over again. And I know that, many organizations are going away from Agile coaches or other experts, product coaches or whatever. It goes so much faster if you get some help, right? Some support in the beginning to create the habit, to understand, hey, we're not standing up for 15 minutes each day to report to each other. We're trying to help each other mitigate dependencies, impediments, whatever it might be, so that we can deliver the right thing faster. It is not to check up on what each team member is doing. If those questions don't work, then we ask different questions, right?
And also, if we talk about those coaches, it's like we expect those coaches to at least bring those practices, skill set people are missing, not to force them. That's our recommendation, I believe here.
Yeah.
But if as a coach you don't know how to do product incrementality, like an agile coach, you don't know how to do product incrementality, how do you teach the team? It's not by asking better question on the daily, because they don't know how to answer the question, because they don't have the skills. So it's not just about the clarity, about the skills, building those skills into the team.
Yeah, you need a teacher who has the expertise, right? It doesn't work to have a teacher who's just, maybe they've taken a SAFe course or something, they're certified, and now they're an Agile coach, which unfortunately we see a lot of. And it's not their fault, right? Except that we don't understand what is the benefit we're trying to achieve with this. And it's very easy, I think, or at least we have seen, it's very easy for some Agile coaches to be like, if the management says, no, we're not doing it that way. Okay, fine, we won't do it that way. No, we're trying to get the outcome, right? So we need to put our foot down or whatever and say, no, we're not just going to check a box. We've got 100 Scrum teams by summer. That's one of my experiences. That doesn't mean anything, right? So we need to have people who have the expertise, right? We want to learn. It's like if we're learning a sport, do we need to, have the world's best tennis player be our coach? No, but we need to know somebody who knows how to teach the world's best tennis player, for example, right?
And that's a pretty good idea if they've been previously on the court playing game, right? So that's a pretty good idea. So, okay, so coming back to this one, if I'm on a team and we feel that we're missing some skills, so, we're pretty frustrated, someone tells us, you need to do this incrementally, you need to work together daily, and for the last 10 years I was working individually, writing my code for 3 months. No one was disturbing me. Now they ask me to say what I'm doing, so every day I'm working on my code, will be working on my code. And what do you recommend for these teams?
So I would first of all just tweak it to one question: what do you need help with? And that's it. And maybe the meeting's only 5 minutes. If there's still resistance to even having that stand-up meeting just for a short period of time with just one question, then I would set up a little experiment in the team and say, okay, this is what we're testing out. We're testing out whether the stand-up meeting actually helps us remove impediments that enables us to move faster or get to the right outcomes. Put some evaluation criteria, decide how long you want to run the experiment, maybe some conditions that go with it. One of the conditions, everybody shows up for the stand-up meeting, for example, because otherwise it doesn't work. And then after however long you want to do it, a month or a week, whatever, decide, go back and evaluate against the criteria. Yes or no, binary questions for the evaluation criteria, just like in the scientific method, and then make some decisions. Does it work for us? Are we getting the benefit out of it? And if not, don't do it. Maybe there's some other way. Maybe we go to lunch every day or whatever.
It is not mandatory as far as I know.
No.
Hopefully. Okay, so wrapping up, the thing I've heard, at least this is my observation. So first of all, what we're talking about in intent-based leadership is not just about how you work as a leader, but also how you work how you change the organization from the employee perspective. So how you influence formal managers, formal leaders, because you don't need to be a manager to be a leader in the organization. So this is one thing. So no matter where you are in the organization, you can use these ideas to change the organization. Yeah. Second thing is start with trust, then move to anything else. Not to start with the building the competence and then build the trust. So start with trust, then build the competence if they are missing. Next thing is what I'm hearing, as a leader, you need to change the information you're passing down to the team, let's say, to make this clarity, and then you need to build those skills at your team. So figure out what kind of skills those people need, and asking the question what kind of help you need every day. That's pretty good way. What is the one or maybe two items I'm missing? Probably more than those, but given the time constraints we have, and we cannot talk for 24 hours. So 1-2 items I'm missing on my list, which we say, okay, remember about those.
Yeah. So I think, especially as a leader, and a leader, as you said, at every level of the organization, this is not about managers, it is about leaders, and that's not tied to a title. This takes time, and we're human too. So we maybe need to get over our old habits as well. Supporting and encouraging people is the only way to get to high performance. You know, coming in and like, oh, how come this isn't working? That just pushes more stress onto people. So if we can remember that, okay, for us too as leaders, we need to sometimes take a deep breath, go for a quick walk, and then we come back and we can be the leader that our team members want or our managers want, so that we can support and encourage people to get to those outcomes that we're trying to achieve.
And I think this especially for those people who've seen those change before, because if you've seen this change before, especially if you work as an Agile coach for many organizations or through many organizations, you know that this change can happen. And my observations, the moment you know this can change happen, is like you start to force, because you know they can do it and they don't know it yet, so you're just trying to force them to go too quickly. So patient and a bit of humor probably is a good idea in this case. Not the sarcasm, but the humor.
Yes.
All right. Also, I really like the conversation. We're gonna put the links to website. We're gonna put the links to cheat sheets. We're gonna put the links to books under the recording. Thank you very much for our conversation. Thank you guys and ladies for listening to us, and see you in the next episode, so don't forget to sign up. Thank you.
To learn more, visit procognita.com/getagile.